with North Korea. President Trump has now agreed to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un by the month of May. This comes after South Korea extended the invitation from Pyongyang to our president during a bilateral meeting between the Koreas. Watch.
In our meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said he is committed to denuclearization. Kim pledged that North Korea will refrain from any further nuclear or missile tests. He expressed his eagerness to meet President Trump as soon as possible.
Now, 2 days before this historic announcement, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin joined me and said that the president will continue to put maximum pressure on Pyongyang until we get a solid path toward denuclearization. Here's what he said 2 days ago.
One of the major reasons why they're coming to the table is because of the economic sanctions, and we're not going to change those sanctions. We will continue to put sanctions in place until they agree to fully denuclearizing the peninsula in something that we can hold them accountable for and verify.
Joining me now to talk more about that is Fox News national security and foreign policy expert and former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor, Walid Phares is with us. Also with us this morning, former CIA Deputy Division Chief for the Koreas and the Heritage Foundation Northeast Asia Senior Research Fellow, Bruce Klingner. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for joining us. Bruce, let me kick it off with you. Do we believe North Korea that he wants this meeting and he is willing to denuclearize?
Well, they're required to denuclearize under 10 or 11 UN resolutions, and North Korea previously promised in 8 international agreements either to never build nuclear weapons or to give up the weapons they promised never to build. So I think there's a lot of reason for skepticism here, but certainly it's really a mind-boggling development in what's been a whirlwind of developments just this week, let alone comparing the difference between where we were in December, where it seemed sort of an inevitable path to a military clash.
Walid, 1 year ago, the president said there will be fire and fury if North Korea makes a wrong move. Is this the result of the president's tough talk?
This is the result of a multi-dimensional policy which most likely led to the decision in Pyongyang to engage with the United States. And one, you have, as you just said earlier, the sanctions. 2, very important, the deployment of task forces. 3, talks with China. And North Korea had asked China, what if I clash with the United States? Will you be with me? And China said no. And of course, the most important diplomatic move was the last Security Council resolution out of the United Nations, which convinced North Korea that they are in a box. So they moved now in a different direction. My other question is, what is the strategy of North Korea at this point in time? Once they meet and after that, what would they do?
Bruce, it's Kevin Kelly here. My biggest question is, what is China's role in this relationship, and what are they going to do? Obviously, they don't want the region to be destabilized. There's obviously conflict in the South China Sea. We've seen, though, recently that North Korea has actually shipped chemical weapons to Syria. They've actually done it through Chinese counterparts and trading partners. What is their role in this meeting?
Well, right now, I think China's going to be standing back. What they've been wanting for a long time is South Korea to talk with the North and the U.S. to talk with the North, often regardless of what actions North Korea had done. Whenever North Korea either did a provocation, a violation of UN resolution, or even 2 deadly attacks against South Korea in 2010, China would always take North Korea's side and say, well, can't we all just get along? Can't you overlook these actions? And can't all sides simply refrain from provocations and come back to the table? So they're going to be happy that both Washington and Seoul are talking with Pyongyang, but obviously, we have to arrange the parameters of the negotiations in such a way that we're not giving up something just to get North Korea back to square one, because we've already offered many things over the years. So, as the president has said, we need to maintain the pressure until the behavior actually changes by North Korea.
Walid, it's Dagan McDowell. Kim Jong-un has long said that he will not negotiate away his weapons, and what his strategy in the past has been to simply buy more time to continue this nuclear program. You saw it under the Bush administration. What is this administration willing to accept if they start really talking about a deal with North Korea?
Well, first of all, you are right. North Korean strategy is to gain as much time as possible. They are adapting the concept of strategic patience. But North Korea now has gone so far. What is it going to try to sell to the United States, to this administration, is some sort of concessions so that during that time they will either develop further weapons but without testing them, or who knows, maybe their calculations is that at some point the administration and Congress and the institutions here won't have that strength to continue with the pressure on North Korea. Maybe they have those calculations as well.
You know, that's one reason that senators, Republican senators, are urging this president to use caution in this meeting. Now, Senator Lindsey Graham is issuing a warning to Pyongyang in a statement. Here's what he has put out yesterday. He says, a word of warning to North Korean President Kim Jong-un. The worst possible thing you can do is meeting with President Trump in person and try to play him. If you do that, it will be the end of you and your regime. Bruce, is this meeting just another ploy, do you think? I know that I'm asking you in different ways, but hearing Senator Graham say he's trying to play him tells you where the Senate is, or where Lindsey Graham is.
Right. The Congress has been very skeptical of North Korea's intentions and actually on a bipartisan basis had been frustrated with both the Trump and the Obama administrations for not fully enforcing U.S. law. We're still pulling our punches against Chinese entities that are violating U.S. law, misusing the U.S. financial system. So we've had a mixture of messages, sometimes confusing. But certainly, I think, as I said before, there's a lot of reason for skepticism. You know, even the South Korean version of what North Korea reportedly agreed to, it shows there are a lot of very heavy strings attached. They're really saying that they will denuclearize, but with the end of the U.S. hostile policy, which in North Korea's terms, that can mean everything from an abrogation of the U.S.-South Korea Defense Treaty, removal of U.S. forces, and a long list of other demands, including an ending of all U.S. and U.N. sanctions. So they'll be coming in with a long list of demands.
All right. Is there anything you would be watching, Walid, in terms of their gestures leading up to this May meeting? What should we focus on leading up to this May meeting in terms of body language, if you will?
He, i.e. the dictator of North Korea, wants that meeting to happen. He considered this is his insurance policy against actually the United States. And, of course, he's offering this to China. I would be looking at the internal situation in North Korea. Too much of these concessions will have an impact. So he can make some concessions, but not to the point of fully denuclearizing. That would need a perestroika-like movement in North Korea.